Okay, we'll start this workshop session, and I would ask the clerk to please call roll.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Mudd.
Here.
O'Donnell.
Here.
Darren Scott.
Here.
Will Scott.
Here.
Wankle. Here. Brown.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Mayor.
Here. Well, thanks for coming. First up is a presentation. She gave a presentation to the Kiwanis, I believe, and Steve Alderman Romowski felt it would be a good idea that she gave a presentation to the city council. Unfortunately, she's retiring from the Historic Preservation District Commission, but we've got her in here real quick to give us a brief description, and I would turn the floor over to Ms. Cindy Balke. Cindy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to talk to you guys real quick about like how we got to where we are now. So our current historic district was created in the 80s, and so that's, you know, State Street, College Street, Church Street, that part of town. And then in 2014, we realized that our historic National Register district lines did not match up with our local district lines in that area. So we altered that area, and then and at that time we held public meetings and went for city council, and it was a very similar process to what we went through earlier this year. And so now we've gone through all of this year with the downtown district. So I've been on the commission for 12 years, and in that amount of time there's been a lot of talk about creating a downtown historic district, that we would like to create one. And there hasn't been a whole lot of action in those 12 years that I've been on the commission. You have to work with a particular person at the state, and getting him to agree with it and getting surveys done and getting all of our ducks in a row took quite a bit of time. So we finally did all that, and then in May, we finally got the green light to go ahead and submit our nomination. So you really have to think of this National Register nomination like a thesis that you work with a professor on, not so much a test that you turn in and you hope you do good. So it was a lot of back and forth between that. So it took a lot of time to get the nomination together. And then when we got the green light to go ahead and do this in May, then they said we want us, to be at the state meeting in June. So that gave us a very short window to get all of our ducks in a row and paperwork done and everything. So some concerns came out of that, and they were all very legitimate concerns, that this was a rushed process. There hasn't been much in the newspaper about it or anything. And that was largely because we were given this June deadline to be at this meeting. And then other things, just confusion. What's the difference between a National Register district and a local district? And how is that going to affect each individual property owner? I can go into that a little more if you want me to, but in the end, we chose to take the local district nomination off of the table and just do the National Register district. Council chose to table that, which is fine. The nomination did go on to the state. We don't have to have city council approval to send it on to the state. It helps, but we don't have to. And then the state approved it, so it was one of the best nominations they ever saw. And they sent it on to the federal level, and they approved it as well. So now the downtown is a National Register Historic District. Would you like me to explain that a bit more?
Sure.
Okay, good. So the National Register District, that means it's really a feather in the cap for Jacksonville. There's the prestige that goes along with it. There are tax credits that are wonderful that go along with it. But there's nobody watching over your property saying, ooh, I don't like what you did. They don't do that. If you change your building so much that you can't even recognize it anymore, if you tear down a building, the most they're going to do is make your property listed as non-contributing. It's not going to change the district greatly one way or the other. Unless everybody tears down their property, then that makes a difference. But, so the difference between that and a local district is that the local district comes before the Historic Preservation Commission. So if you're doing work to your property that involves a permit that affects the outside of the building, we don't go into the inside of the building, then that comes before the Historic Preservation Commission. We look at the project, we if it's keeping the building, the historic character of the building intact, then we approve the project and it continues on its merry little way. Most of our projects that we have now for our current historic district go through really quickly. Is people putting new shingles on their house, they're repairing their porch, but they're gonna keep it the same. There's a lot of fences and pools that get put in the historic district. So it's a lot of things like that that come before us, most of the things that we approve. But another concern that came up was, how is this gonna affect me? And that was a hard question for us to answer because we follow the Secretary of Interior standards, but we don't have a set answer. If you wanna put siding on your house, that's not a solid yes or no answer. We look at every situation. We look at the overall project, the homeowner situation, the condition of the property. There's a lot of things that go into this, and it's different for every property. So we look at it as an individual situation.
Cost.
And cost of it. There's a lot of things that factor into our decisions. So we did not have a standard answer for anybody, especially property owners looking at this. If they want to put awning on their building, it just depends upon the property and if it's appropriate for the property and things like that. So going forward in the future, since it is a National Register Historic District already, we as a commission would like to see it become a local district eventually in the future, but in the meantime, we're gonna kind of, slow down and really put more stuff out there about what it means to become a local district, what that means for the property owners, how the whole process works, and just give people more time to get used to the idea, give them a little more opportunity to ask questions and whatnot, and hopefully in the future it'll happen. We don't have a set date for that happening in the future, but we would like it to.
I think that when Judy Ty came and presented it, one of the, there was an individual that was concerned that their building, when they bought it, it wasn't in the register. Now that was going to put it undue,
No restrictions.
undue restraints on them. And I think that was probably the biggest thing by the local comparably, but she also, again, as you're explaining that in the national, that gives you an opportunity that if you want to be part of it, then you can have these tax credits are available to you, but it kind of gives you that choice, and so.
There are a lot of tax credits available, and for example, the Ayers House that they're turning into the bed and breakfast, the big one, that are using tax credits to help pay for that as well. But anybody going through that process is working with the State Historic Preservation Office very closely, so anybody going through that process is not gonna tear down their building or make it so unrecognizable. So, the great thing about the National Register is that is,
Actually, the prestige of having it.
thank you, that's the word I was looking for. That is a big thing. Tax credits are a wonderful thing, but there's not a whole lot of enforcement along with that. So it's a local district where enforcement comes into play. And we try, as I said, we try and work with property owners as much as we can.
I think we should say congratulations on that, because that is a move for Jacksonville as well, so thank you.
Some of the other national registers we have in town, I think the Bowl is.
So the Bowl is part of our historic district. So our historic district, that church, state, college, that area, that's all a National Register as well. So that's listed under the Bowl, or as part of the district. Illinois College, ISD, so the library is not in that district, but it is a National Register property. So we have a few properties that are significant enough on their own to be listed on the National Register, but it's pretty hard to get a property listed on the National Register.
Mhm.
So the action the state took at the end of the fiscal year, didn't they do something where it made properties in downtown eligible for edge tax credits as part of the designation they did?
Because it got listed on the National Register, you mean?
Yeah, it wasn't, wasn't that why the state was trying to get something by December 30th?
So the State Historic Preservation Office really wanted us there in June because their fiscal year ends in June or July, somewhere in there. And they wanted to get it off of their budget for the year, so that was their incentive to have us to come in June so they could get their looking pretty.
Now, one of the other issues with, so you guys don't meet regularly, you meet,
Once a month.
Once a month.
the first Monday of each month.
And some of the projects might get delayed because it's between a meeting. Were you moving towards something that some projects would automatically, like setting standards, so some projects would automatically have to be reviewed, not have to go through the historical commission to kind of speed things up?
So we were talking about that, the plan was to, if it was gonna become a local district for the downtown, it would be the same commission as we have now, just so there's not confusion with two different commissions. So the plan was to either have more meetings, meet twice a month, for example, or we can always call a special meeting to have that as well. We do have certain things like our current historic district, it has a lot of, homes in it. So when they are going through and, putting like shingles on their house, something pretty similar like that. If you have black shingles on and you're putting black shingles on, city just goes with that and we come along and we sign the paperwork later.
Chairman
So some
signs
things
off.
go through almost automatically. And it would be the same thing for the downtown historic district. If you're just putting on a new roof, that's not a huge deal.
I'm amazed that anyone serves on any commission with the city, because it's a lot of work and I think you get paid zip, right?
We're all volunteers, but I gotta say it's a great commission, because I've been on for 12 years. Other people have been on a lot longer than me, so it's a great balance of people who have been on for a long time that have such a rich history of the town. Steve Harden, Pat Kennedy, they know everything. They're on there, but then we always have new people coming along too, so they bring new ideas and a fresh insight all the time. So it's a really great commission to be on. There are 2 positions open if anybody's interested.
And at the meeting in June, where we didn't move forward with endorsing the application, I mean, that's something that we as a city council should need to think about for the future, that there's work that adds to the downtown, and we need to not just wait for the next law list before we do something. We should start progressing towards doing something to help keep the downtown nice. Because that's not where, you don't want strict financial decision made downtown, because we don't want the downtown turn to a strip mall.
Okay.
I mean, we have historical buildings, we have a character that we want to maintain. There's gotta be some things we can do to support that.
Any questions for Cindy? Well, you've been a great chairman, and we appreciate your service on the commission, Cindy, for the last 12 years, so
Thank you.
great job.
Thank you, Cindy.
City attorney's report.
Thank you. The one item I have is the first reading of Unicode recodification. We have emailed out all the materials. Second reading will be in January. At that point, they would go online for the public and so. The only other thing we'll add to that, with these revisions, a lot of the things that you've done, such as the charges for golf and all that sort of thing, we have to redo those, as parts of those we have to do in January, because since we have a whole new code of ordinance coming in, you have to have rates adopted through that. So in addition to the second reading of this in January, we'll have other cleanup items on those kind of rates. It's not imposing new rates, it's just re-adopting the rates that you've got. And that's all I have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. City clerk's reports, yep.
The Airmark Uniform Services, they handle all of the uniforms for the different departments, the utilities, cemetery, and street department, not cemetery.
No, we're not.
Anyway, they provide towels and rugs and all that good stuff. We had looked at, a couple of years ago, we looked at another company. The problem with another company is all of the uniforms and everything would go back, and then we'd have to buy all new uniforms, because you gotta buy the uniforms, and then basically they take them back and clean them. So Airmark has come in with an extension of their contract with no changes. There's no increases or anything like that. I've spoken to all the department heads that are involved with the Airmark, and they've had no issues. They've had good service, and when there is a complaint, usually the district manager comes down and we work it out. So we've had really good luck with them, and it basically is just an extension of the service.
Questions for Skip?
How is it for year, 2 years?
I think that's a three-year contract.
Thank you. committee reports, finance, IT, and personnel. Alderman Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had that one item, I discussed the contract and rate increase for services of the 5-star ambulance.
Each year at the end of the year, the ambulance companies have to up their contract, their permit, license, whatever. And it just so happens that Lifestar is our only ambulance company at this point in time. We had a lot of discussion over that over the last 6 months. And they have taken, their increases are minimal, but they haven't had any increases for 4 years on some of their services. Not all of their services, it's just about 4 or 5 services that they're increasing on. Basically, what their guidelines are pretty standard, and they are the only ambulance company that we do have. So that is an extension of their contract for 3 years. And then each year they have to give us another application in order to get their new license. So they get a license every year, but the contract that we have with them is for 3.
Skip, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Does that come through the ambulance commission?
It did not, and the reason for that is the ambulance commission did not meet. There's some negotiating going on with the mayor's office and about the commission itself.
Yeah, they want to disband it. There's been some of the folks that don't think we need to have a commission. And they want to come to the next meeting in January to discuss that. That once you get rid of a commission, it's hard to really get back a commission. With only one ambulance service in town, if there's issues, I think there needs to be a platform where we can take it to a commission. Or if there's another viable ambulance service that wants to come to our town, I think it needs to be vetted by the commission before it comes to the council. That's just my thoughts. I hate just saying, okay, we're done with the commission. Then guess what? It's all comes to us. I think it's a good conduit to keep the commission in place. They also want to come back and talk, they about the American leaving, and they would potentially like to fine them because they left before their contract expired. Those things, I said, we can talk about it. I've talked to their chairman, and they'd like to discuss it with us. But as far as Lifestar, I know their chairman shared that they are very low on price compared to a lot of communities, that they do a good job, and it's been 4 years.
Right.
So
Did everybody get a copy of what their proposal is?
As you were talking about the importance of that commission, as you remember when there was like 4 companies that were trying to come into Jacksonville, we kept trying to tell them that, you know what, we don't have that there's not that much business for all 4 of you to survive. But how long did that take? It took quite a bit of time. So if we had to deal with it as a city council, that would
And Tony, even if we keep the commission, if they don't want to, right now they meet quarterly. If they feel like they don't need to meet quarterly, if they want to meet that one time to keep the commission going, that's fine. If there's no business, you can cancel meetings, but once you get rid of things, it's hard to get back. And
I agree.
That's just my thoughts, but they're eventually coming to you. Any other questions for Skip or for Don?
It's on the agenda, not the first reading. We get those that didn't get the information, everything's gone up about $100 for each category. The ALS level 1 emergency, ALS level 2 emergency, the BLS emergency. Everything, their proposal is to go up $100 for each one of those categories.
Worst case scenario, you don't pass it, we don't pass it, say no. We lose another one? Just checking.
We could be even up one.
Okay.
Planning and Public Works, Alderman Bill Scott.
We'll let Aaron take that.
Just
discuss the approving final plat for first edition of Country Club Hills.
And Mr. Sleeman, Bill?
Yeah, this was presented, I don't know, back in September maybe, October, a while back, and we, owner Michael Hayes wanted to wait so he can reduce his bonding capabilities immensely, because they were getting ready to put the asphalt down. The asphalt's all done, everything's done essentially for the subdivision. There was a small punch list of items that if the weather would get nicer, we could probably get to, but it's probably not gonna get better for till spring. But, I mean, it's a small amount. The sidewalks are still to be done, we talked about that, at Plans Commission, that they would become, and that each home comes in up to a maximum of 5 years, and if there's still sidewalks out there after 5 years, then you come in and finish them. There's a letter of credit that we submitted with the, our letter last week for $75,000. That includes the sidewalks and the punch list items, so. Electrical is out there, except for the light poles. They won't put light poles in until the plat is approved, because it's not a public street technically, until that happens, so they won't do that. But all the electrical is in, the sewer, water, gas lines are in, so property's pinned and everything, so it's ready to start selling lots.
Any questions for Bill? Okay, thank you, Bill. Utility, Alderman Wackle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have 2 items tonight. Number 1, discuss change order number 12 for the new water treatment plant project. With Benton and Associates here to discuss that.
Thank you. Contract change order number 12 is the amount of $129,346.80. When we met about the closeout budget about a year ago, we anticipated this final change order to be about $75,000. It's increased about 55. Once we did the work down by the old water plant, there was numerous valves that were discovered that didn't operate. So we had to add about 13 line stops, which stops the water as the valve would, but in the case where they don't work, you have to do something else. And those usually run about $3,000 to $6,000 a piece, about 6 or 7 for a 16-inch line stop. So the amount $129,346.80 is not included in your other item tonight, which is the partial pay request to Williams Brothers Construction. If this item is approved this evening, then we would put this change order amount in a future pay request, most likely the final pay request, as we previously discussed. Questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Number 2, discuss amendment number 1 for the Northwest Street Water Main Replacement Project. And we'll turn that over to Mark Swell.
Thanks, Mike. Amendment 1 goes in hand with the original engineering agreement, which was for task A and B, survey and design. Now that we've submitted permits for the plans and specs to EPA, we're ready to go for C and D, which is amendment number 1, which is bidding and construction.
Where about is that, did you say, on Northwest?
Northwest Street, starting out here on West Douglas, go down all the way to Lafayette.
Oh, okay.
And then we're going down Lafayette all the way to Sandy, tying at Sandy. Which the opinion of probable cost told me was around $350,000 for that project.
Okay.
For construction. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, any public comment at this time? We'll have opportunity in there too. Okay, we will adjourn this workshop session and we'll move into the business.